Good morning. We are finishing up Leviticus chapter 23. We are going to be looking at 3 feasts that take place in the fall. Now, we started yesterday by talking about how we have the feast of Passover, which parallels with the crucifixion of Jesus, the feast of first fruits, which parallels with the resurrection of Jesus. We have the Feast of Weeks, which is the day of Pentecost. And so all these things line up. So first, let's just go through these fall feasts. In verse 23, we have Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath rest, a memorial blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation. You shall do new customary work on it, and you shall offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. This is the civil New Year, which can get confusing, but Israel has 2 calendars. I know this is 4, but it's 2 on 2 hands. So there's 2 calendars. We have over here the religious calendar. It starts in the month of Nisan, March, April. Over here, we have the civil New Year, and that takes place in the fall, which is the 7th month when you're using the religious calendar. It's funny because before Passover, they only had the New Year in the fall. And it's interesting, but think of it this way. And I'll be honest, this literally just came in my mind for the first time. I've never thought this thought before. But a Jewish day starts at sunset, goes through the night, and then goes through the day and ends then at sunset. So a Jewish day is night and then day. Night and day is the first day when you look at Genesis. That's kind of the idea. So their calendar year is kind of similar. It starts at the beginning of the fall winter time. And they go through the fall and winter, and then their calendar goes, and then you have the second half of the year going through the spring and summer. And so I don't know, something about fall and winter kind of makes me think about going into the night first and then into the spring and summer. And so that is how their calendar works. Now, then they blow a big trumpet and they have a celebration. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, on the 10th day of the 7th month. So that really kicks off the fall feast. It's day 1, they blow the trumpet. On the 10th day shall be the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. So we already read quite a bit about this. You back up and let's see here. I actually don't have it written down. You'd think I would have had that written down. The Day of Atonement is chapter 16. So chapter 16 is all about this day. So this is just more about like the festivities. That's all about the actual ritual that was taking place. 10th day of the 7th month, Day of Atonement, Yom Day Kippur, the Day of Atonement. It shall be a holy convocation. You shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. Afflict your souls. It's the one day of commanded fasting in the Jewish calendar. You shall do no work on the same day. It's a day of atonement to make atonement for you before the Lord your God. Any person who is not afflicted in soul shall be on that same day, shall be cut off from his people. And any person who does not work on the same day, that person I will destroy from among his people, who does any work. Excuse me. So if you work on that day, it's supposed to be a day of rest. You're not supposed to work. He's going to get cut off from his people. 31, you should do no manner of work. It should be a statute forever throughout your generations and your dwellings. It shall be to you a Sabbath of solemn rest. You shall afflict your souls on the 9th day of the month at evening. From evening to evening, you shall celebrate your Sabbath. Okay, so it's preparing, kind of as a day preparing going into it. Now, that's the Day of Atonement. Again, this the ceremonies in chapter 16. Now, chapter 23 still, verse 33, to the end of the chapter, is Sukkot, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, also known as the Feast of Ingathering. And it's the booths. We'll hear it. Feast of Booths, Feast of Tabernacles. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel. The 15th day of the 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days to the Lord. On the first day there shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work on it. For 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. On the 8th day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. It is a sacred assembly, and you shall do no customary work on it. There are the feasts of the Lord, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, to offer an offering made by fire to the Lord, a burnt offering and a grain offering, sacrifice, drink offerings, everything on its day. And beside the Sabbaths of the Lord, beside your gifts, beside your vows, beside your freewill offerings, which you will give to the Lord. So this is a week-long celebration. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit, so the ingathering of the land, you shall keep the feast of the Lord for 7 days. On the first day there shall be a Sabbath rest, and on the 8th day a Sabbath rest. You shall take for yourselves on the first day of the fruit of the beautiful trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, willows of the brook. You shall rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days. So you'll see that they'll make these little booths, and they'll hang these leaves and pieces of fruit and stuff from their booth. My mom, it was kind of cute. She had this like little kid, like it's a Jewish, kid thing for like a Sukkot kit, and it had these little, like their little plush doll, like a little, like when you make a stuffed animal out of, but it was all the different components for the fruit you'd hang, and they all had Velcro on them so you could stick them up. It was very cute. My mom's into this kind of stuff. And you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord for 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generation. Celebrate in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths, so you're out of your house for 7 days. All who are native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So Moses declared to the children of Israel the feasts of the Lord. So the idea, the heart behind the Feast of Booths, was to remember how the Israelites, like at the time that this is being written, honestly, at the time while they are wandering the wilderness, they were in booths. But later on, when they actually get houses in the promised land, that they take this week to go back out, live in tents, and remember this. I've heard it taught that it would create a longing for your permanent dwelling place, that you long to go back to your permanent dwelling. And there's a lesson there about us not wanting to be in these temporary containers anymore, but long for our permanent dwelling in our permanent resurrected bodies. Now, notice though that there's a little bit of an undertone, that there's some messages in here. Yesterday we looked at the crucifixion, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the day of Pentecost and the birth of the church, and then summer. That's how those feasts play out. Summertime, the time where we're supposed to be planting and watering and harvesting, working. We're supposed to be working. And that goes on until the trumpet blows. And so we hear that the Lord himself, he's going to descend with a shout, with the trump of an archangel, that the trumpet blows, and the saints shall be gathered to him. So a trumpet kicks off these fall feasts, and a trumpet's going to kick off the end times. It all starts with a trumpet blow. The first thing on the event calendar is the rapture of the church. Then you see the Day of Atonement, which is interesting because in that day, all of Israel is covered in the blood of a lamb. That's the idea of the Day of Atonement. On that one day, there was regular sin sacrifices. We've already gone through all these sacrifices. And so people are always bringing stuff. But on that day, there was one sacrifice for all. And it's interesting because they're supposed to afflict themselves. Well, Zechariah 12:10 says when they look on him whom they pierced, they're going to weep for him as one weeps for an only son, like losing a child. That all of Israel is going to look at him whom they've pierced. They're going to look at me whom they've pierced, actually, is what Zechariah 12:10 says. And it's God doing the speaking. So we do have to ask, when did the Jews ever pierce God? And so atonement takes place with the people of Israel. And that's what we see during the 7 years of tribulation, is that Israel is won back to the Lord. And there's mass revival amongst the Jewish people. And the Feast of Tabernacles lasts 7 days. And so note that 7 days, Israel for 7 years is going to be down here on the earth and going through the tribulation. 7 years, the church is going to be in heaven with the Lord, spending that time with him. And so you can go through these feasts and you can see all the symbolism that ties in. All the spring feasts, they're fulfilled in the first coming of Jesus. All the fall feasts, they're fulfilled in the second coming of Jesus. And little things like dates and mentions and points and facts, they all paint this picture of eschatology, of end time study that we're pretty familiar with. There's some other cool stuff about the Feast of Tabernacles. 2 rituals that aren't mentioned in here are the 4 great lamps that they would light. There are these 4 big lights that they light, so when they'd gather these lamps, and that was supposed to represent the pillar of fire. And then they would take these gigantic things of water and they pour them out, 7 large bowls or pitchers of water, and that was to represent the water from the rock. And remember, this time was supposed to remind the Israelites who are in the future living in the promised land, it's supposed to remind them about what went on in the desert. So they live in the booths, then they go to the temple, and there's these lights to represent the fire. Well, if you go through your gospel accounts, in John, and when Jesus talks about, I am the light of the world, well, he would have been saying that, and it says in the scripture that it's during the Feast of Tabernacles that he goes at the Feast of Booths, and there's these lamps lit, but Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. And it's during the last day of the feast. And so it's interesting because it mentions it specifically in John, and I actually don't have the reference. I want to say it's like John 12. That's just a guess, though, to be honest. No, that's way too late. Why am I saying John 12? And it's probably John 8 or something like that. There we go. Aha, John 7. On the last day of the great feast, Jesus stood and cried out, saying, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. So that is the Feast of Booths, and it's on the last day of the Feast of Booths where they pour out the water to be the water from the rock, these 7 large bowls. And Jesus said, hey, if anyone thirsts, have him come to me and drink. And so it's knowing how these festivals went down that just paints this better picture of what was going on in the Gospels and what was Jesus doing. Why was he saying this stuff? It's by knowing how these ceremonies took place. And we learn those things by studying the book of Leviticus and our whole Bibles. And so I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it thrice. It takes a whole Bible to make a whole Christian. So let's keep studying the Bible, verse by verse, the entire thing. I've got a little ways to go teaching the entire Bible with our church on Sundays. Maybe someday we'll get the entire Bible done during our morning studies. That'll take quite a while, but we've got time. Maybe not. We'll find out. All that said, God bless you guys. Have a great day. And it's Friday. So I will see you guys on Monday, if not sooner at church. You guys take care. Almost done here.